I'm going to marry the woman I cheated on you with, and I want a divorce.
My husband said this without hesitation. And finally, he said something like this.
And because I'm getting married again, I need you to look after my parent.
What? I'm counting on you, okay? My mother-in-law, who do not blame her own son for having an affair and try to depend on me. I cannot be with such insane people. So I told them something. Then my mother-in-law turned pale and apologized to me sincerely. I am so sorry. My name is Vicky. I'm 40 years of age and works a part-time job. My husband Andy and I have been married for about 16 years. We met through work. We were co-workers at the same company. We started working together on the same project and went out for drinks. We grew closer and ended up dating. My husband was 5 years older than me, and from my point of view at the time, he seems to be a mature man. He was funny and cool, and I fell in love with him at once. We then went on several dates and ended up having a relationship. And after about a year of dating, he proposed to me and we got married. I was very happy to marry the man I loved. I was only 24 years old at the time, but I still decided to get married. So I guess I really loved him. After that, I was happily married with my husband and working together. Then, after 3 years of marriage, our son Daniel was born. He was so cute, thinking he was an angel when he was just born. We were happy, and we were building a good family. I resigned from my job after the birth to focus on raising our son. I thought it was good that I quit my job because I was able to spend a lot of time with my son. And I had a rather good relationship with my in-laws. Every time I went to visit my in-laws, they smiled kindly at me and made me feel comfortable. I thought that I was really living a happy married life. My parents-in-law are very fond of their grandson Daniel. They often came to our house and we went to visit them. Then my husband made this suggestion.
Would you like to move in with my parents? So that Daniel and my parents will see each other every day. We could live in a big house without paying rent.
I thought that was a good idea. Because my in-laws and I had a good relationship at that time. My son is going to grow up. Then it would be better for him to live freely in a bigger house. I thought so and agreed to live with them. However, I regretted my decision at the time. At first, I thought that living together with them was going very well. My parents-in-law seemed very happy to be able to live with their grandchildren. And my husband seems relaxed to be back in his parents' house. I tried my best to do housework as a housewife. My parents-in-law and my husband never complained to me. My son grew up to be a good boy, and we all watched him grow up. However, there was something that bothered me. My parents-in-law spoiled my son too much. They bought him everything he wanted and gave him allowance without our permission. I saw this and thought it was not good for my son. I felt it was not good for his education. So one day, I told my parents-in-law, "Can you please not buy Daniel too many things?" When I said this, my in-laws' eyes widened and they became angry. "You are depriving us of a joy of spending time with our grandchild."
Do you think you are the only one raising him?
They were the ones who yelled at me like that. But as a mother, I wanted to educate him properly, so I didn't take a step back. I didn't mean it like that. Of course you're free to play with Daniel. I'm just asking you not to buy things for him without permission.
You know, if Daniel wanted something, you'd buy it for him, wouldn't you?
Yes, and how will you take the responsibility if we don't buy it, and it makes him sad and he doesn't like us? It seems that the in-laws buy things for their grandchild because they want him to like them. But what if that makes my son selfish? How are they going to take responsibility? The parents-in-law are very kind. I will explain to Daniel that his grandparents is very kind and loves him. Please don't buy him anything like that. Even though I had said all that, my in-laws did not seem to be convinced. When my husband came home from work, they started talking to him as if it was my fault. Vicky told me not to play with my grandchild.
She wants to be alone with him.
She wants to fend to him all for herself. I was surprised to hear my in-laws say something completely different, and my husband took them at their word.
Hey, what's going on? You're being mean to my mom and dad.
Just wait a minute. I didn't do anything like that. I gave my husband a good explanation. I said I wanted them to stop buying him too much stuff for the sake of our child. But my husband believed what my in-laws said, not what I said.
Don't be silly. Don't lie to me like that.
I'm not lying.
Then you are saying my parents are lying.
My husband's eyes widened, and he became too angry. In the end, no matter how much I tried to explain, he believed my in-laws' side of the story.
I never thought you were such a terrible woman.
Since then, my husband and my in-laws have been cold toward me. Your food tastes bad.
You serve fish too often. Don't treat us like we're old people, you idiot. Don't bother mom and dad. You really are a useless wife.
These are the kind of things my parents-in-law say to me every day. How can they continue to abuse me like that? I think it is mentally exhausting to be abused by people. I even considered divorce. But my son was only about 5 years old at the time. I have been a housewife since my son was born, and I had not worked for a long time. I was also worried about whether I would be able to find a new job. I had no assurance that I would be able to take him with me when I left. In my current situation, my in-laws can take care of him. My husband is likely to decide that he should take him in instead of me because he has a steady salary. Just because I'm not getting along with my in-laws, I didn't want to give up my son. So I had to just bear with it and not get a divorce. They took advantage of the fact that I was not resisting. My in-laws and my husband started to say more and more terrible things to me. They were so abusive to me that I wondered if they were really the same people. So I started not to think of them as people at all. It makes me feel a little better. That's how I lived my hard life day by day. No matter how badly my husband and in-laws treated me, I thought it would be better if I could watch my son grow up by my side. My son grew up so fast that he went to elementary school. I was worried that he might become selfish because my in-laws had given him too many things. He is a good listener at home, and it seems to be the same at school. When his homeroom teacher told me that he was a very kind and considerate child, I was extremely happy. And my son was studying hard and doing well in school. But for some reason, my in-laws made it sound like it was their achievement.
It's because of our good teaching, isn't it?
That's right. We praise and develop him. We buy him what he wants. That's what's important. I don't understand how buying him what he wants will improve his grades. But my parents-in-law seem to want to involve themselves in everything. I was just trying to give them credit for their son's own hard work while listening to them appropriately. I never tried to get his affection by buying things like my in-laws did. My son still adored me. He would always say, "Mom, Mom," and tell me about things that happened at school. I guess my in-laws didn't like that. When my son reached the middle school years of elementary school, the amount of things he needed got expensive. Until then, it was just sweets and toys. But at that time, they bought him the latest game consoles and software. No matter how much I tried to stop my parents-in-law, it was not enough. I told my son not to play too much and to be punctual and keep his promises. But even then, my in-laws were a pain in the ass.
Don't you feel sorry for him? That you have to stop him from playing when he still wants to play?
We bought it for Daniel because we wanted him to enjoy it. I reported it to my husband, and he yelled at me, which became the usual norm. I was already completely disgusted, and already completely dumbfounded. All I wanted was for my son to grow up to be a good man. That was how I spent my days. Time went by, and my son turned 13 years old. He was now a junior high school student, and as he entered puberty, I faced a lot of difficulties as a parent. While I was thinking about this, an unexpected problem occurred. It was a holiday. My husband suddenly called me into his bedroom and said he wanted to talk to me. I said, "What on earth do you want me here for?" I was completely out of touch with my husband, so I was sure he had no intention of doing so. As I was thinking about this, my husband suddenly made a surprising statement.
I'm going to marry the woman I'm cheating on you with.
What? Divorce? I was surprised at an unexpected words coming from my husband.
Well, it's no wonder you're surprised. I've been trying to keep it from you, but I thought it was time to tell you.
My husband said that to me without hesitation. Why did he decide to publicly tell me that he was having an affair? Well, I don't know what a stupid person thinks. And then, he even said something like this.
And because I will be marrying someone else, I'm going to ask you to take care of my parents too.
What? Wait a minute. We are getting a divorce, right? Then I will have to live with Daniel, won't I? When I said that, my husband said something outrageous.
I'm the one who is leaving.
What? What do you mean?
I'm going to leave this place and start a new married life with my new wife. I'm worried about my parents and the kid, so I'm leaving you in charge of the house. You have a house and you get to live with Daniel, so it's a win-win, right?
I was shocked. It was not a win-win situation at all. I was at a loss for words.
So I will tell my parents about it right away.
My husband said, and suddenly started to head for the living room. I hurried after him. He gave the same explanation to my parents-in-law as he had given to me. I thought they would be angry with him. My in-laws were also crazy people. They said, "Yes, we will miss you, but it can't be helped."
I agree. I think it's better for newlyweds to spend time alone together. We'll be fine as long as this woman takes care of us.
My in-laws couldn't blame their own son for having an affair and tried to rely on me.
If you want to leave, I will make sure you leave Daniel behind.
If you want to leave, you're the only one who leaves. I can't be with these insane people. I told them something. Let me tell you something. I can claim alimony because it is my husband's fault and I'm divorced. And I have a better chance of getting my son.
What? What do you mean?
Because my husband committed adultery. Isn't it better for him to live with someone who hasn't committed adultery?
Wait a minute. So you are living with Daniel?
Yes, of course I will.
We won't let you. Let's ask Daniel then.
My in-laws and my husband said, and went to call my son. They were not going to tell him everything, were they? My son came into the living room.
What's wrong? Dad and Mom are getting a divorce.
What?
So Daniel, how would you like to live here with your grandparents?
Such an explanation and question was unfair. I quickly said the important part. You better explain to him that you are divorcing me because of your infidelity. When I said this, my husband and in-laws were in a panic.
Daniel is just a junior high school student.
Yes, he is. Why are you trying to shock him? My parents-in-law and husband blamed me. But before I could retort, my son opened his mouth.
You're the one who caused the shock, aren't you? Why are you all blaming my mother? What? I mean, I could hear you all arguing earlier. You guys are not sure which one I'm going to follow if you get divorced. It's definitely my mother.
Daniel, why?
Don't you want to live with Grandma and Grandpa? You were nice to me, but you were terrible to my mother, weren't you? To be honest, I couldn't forgive you for that. All of you, Grandma, Grandpa, and Dad. I despised you, and I despised my father for not protecting my mother and blaming her for everything.
Despise? My in-laws looked shocked.
Anyway, I have one answer. I'm living here with my mother. From now on, I'm going to take care of her.
Daniel, I was so happy that my son was on my side. Then my in-laws turned pale and did their best to apologize to me.
We are so sorry.
I apologize, so please don't leave this house. I don't want my grandchild to leave. My parents-in-law pleaded with me, and my husband.
Please, you guys stay here. If you don't stay here, my plan will be ruined. My plan is to live here.
My son and I were not going to give in at any cost. Daniel and I will no longer have anything to do with you. We will definitely be leaving this house, I said, and began to pack up our belongings. My son joined me in packing his bag with only what he needed for the time being.
Where are you going?
My parents' house.
If we go to your parents' house, Daniel will have to change schools. That would be a pity.
My husband said things like that and tried to keep us here until the end.
I would rather change schools than stay here forever. You should first be sorry for what you have done. Do you have any idea how much of the terrible things you have done to your family?
My husband is admonished that way by a child who has just started junior high school. I found it hilarious and struggled to hold back my laughter. My husband looked down, his face turning blue. My parents-in-law were so exhausted that they just slumped down on the floor. My son and I left the house, with him by my side, and drove to my parents' house. I then hired a lawyer and demanded a divorce from my husband, alimony and child support. Of course, I also demanded alimony from the adulterer. My husband thought that if we stayed with his parents, he would not have to pay child support. However, everything did not go as planned, and as a result, he had to pay alimony and child support. In addition, the adulterous partner told him that the story was different, and he was eventually dumped. He is currently staying with his parents and putting most of his income towards alimony and child support. By the way, I told my in-laws' neighbors about the incident. I also sent a content-certified letter to my ex-husband's workplace. People around my ex-husband know about the affair. My ex-husband and in-laws are being looked at coldly by everyone around them. They have been cut off from almost everyone and have become isolated. My ex-husband was told by his parents, "It is your fault. It has become impossible for us to see Daniel." I heard that he was stuffed.
My earnings have made you guys rich until now.
My ex-husband sent me a message saying sorry and that he wanted to get back together with me. I only read the messages and blocked my ex-husband. I also blocked all incoming calls so that he could not contact me at all. And after I went back to my parents' house with my son, I started working as a clerk at the company that my father knew. Now I'm raising my son as a single mother with the support of my parents. My son has remained a kind-hearted child despite all that has happened. He seems to be adjusting well to his new school. I will continue to work as hard as I can and watch my son grow up.
Christina, did you hide it somewhere? Did you take it? My husband Elliot, his face flushed with anger, accuses me. His newly purchased cherished luxury watch has disappeared from the shelf where it was stored. It wasn't me. I don't know anything about your watch. Who else could it be? You say you're working at home every day, but I don't even know what you're actually doing. Give it back, thief. I told you, I didn't take it. No matter how many times I say this, my husband's anger won't subside. He won't listen. Hearing this, my mother-in-law, Carol, who had been listening, revealed a sly and unpleasant smile. Christina, you were cleaning during the day, weren't you? Did you lose it somewhere then? Indeed, during the day, I reluctantly did it in between my work because she told me to clean. But I didn't touch my husband's watch. I told them so, but neither of them believed me. That watch was extremely expensive. Find it right away. You get no food until you find it. Wait a minute, please. No, stop. Despite my resistance, my husband forcefully... My name is Christina. I've been married to my husband Elliot for 3 years. A year ago, my husband insisted that he felt sorry for his mother living alone, and we decided to live together. I was reluctant because my mother-in-law often made sarcastic remarks, but Elliot was adamant and I reluctantly agreed. With the move-in, we bought a house with a mortgage in his name. I worked from home, and the larger house made it easier for me to do my job. However, my husband, who goes to work every day, doesn't understand that working at home is still work. He thinks I'm just playing on the internet and doesn't take my job seriously. Even when I explain my job, he doesn't get it because it's different from his. He swings around this strange idea that real work is sweating and working outside. You were playing on the internet again today, weren't you? You're a lazy type who can't work. I, on the other hand, was busy all day today. I have a lot to do because everyone relies on me. He often says things like that. For being busy and having a lot to do, your salary is kind of low. My husband earns a low wage, but he's a show-off. Before we moved in together, he was forced to send money to his mother every month. He would pay the full amount for drinks at gatherings, saying, "I'll pay," and he also has a habit of wasting money on expensive bags, shoes, and recently, a luxury watch that cost over $10,000. I've told him many times to stop and to consider our finances, but he ignores me. So when we run out of money for living expenses or loans, I pay them. Carol, who doesn't know anything about these things, takes my husband's words at face value and misunderstands that I'm just playing on the internet. Christina, if you have time to play, clean this place. Carol, I'm working now. Yeah, but even if you say you're working, you're not working outside like Elliot, so you're not earning much, right? Come on, hurry up and clean. Or, Christina, I'm meeting my friends now, so get the car ready. Chop chop. What are you gonna do if I'm late because of you? She makes me do housework or drives her around even when I'm working, which is a problem. Hey, Elliot, your mother has this weird idea that work has to be done outside. She doesn't seem to understand the concept of working from home. I can't work like this, you know. I complained to my husband, but he only said, "You should just do it for my mother. Christina, you're so petty." And the discussion didn't go anywhere after this. Then one day, my husband came home from work and stormed over to me with a red face. "Christina, where did you put my luxury watch? Did you hide it somewhere? Did you take it?" He was furiously angry at me, his face red. His newly purchased luxury watch had disappeared from the shelf where it had been kept. It was nowhere to be found. "It wasn't me! I don't know anything about your watch!" I never touch his things, so it couldn't be me. But my husband was convinced I had done it. Who else could it be? You say you're working at home every day, but I don't even know what you're actually doing. You rifled through my shelves and took it, didn't you? Give it back, thief. Like I said, I didn't take it. No matter how many times I said this, his temper wouldn't subside. He wouldn't listen. Carol, who had been listening to our conversation, showed a sly and unpleasant smile. Christina, you were cleaning during the day, weren't you? Did you lose it somewhere then? Indeed, during the day, I reluctantly cleaned in between my work because she told me to do so. But I didn't touch my husband's watch. I told them so, but they didn't believe me. That watch was extremely expensive. Find it right away. You get no food until you find it. Wait a minute! Please, stop! Open up! Please! No way. Start looking in this room first. And he locked me in the room. I searched the house thoroughly, but I couldn't find his watch. Elliot, I'm hungry. No, I told you, no food until you find it. I couldn't leave the house, so I couldn't go out to buy anything, and I was being watched, so I couldn't eat in secret. I ended up going 24 hours without food. The watch was never found, and my husband finally said, "It's your responsibility. Since you didn't find it, you have to compensate for it and pay for the watch." I couldn't afford to pay nearly $10,000 for a luxury watch when we were barely making ends meet. But no matter what I told him, Elliot insisted that I pay. I had no choice but to increase my workload. Between the heavy load of work, housework, and looking after Carol, I was worn out both mentally and physically. When I went back to my parents' place for a change of pace on my day off, my father, Samuel, immediately noticed my state. "Christina, what's wrong? You look pale." "Dad, actually..." I told my father about increasing my work recently, how living together was harder than I thought, how I was worried about getting along with my husband and mother-in-law, but I didn't want to worry him too much. My father listened to my story seriously. "It's hard for strangers to get along all of a sudden, but Christina, don't hesitate to rely on me if you're in trouble. You can even come back home if you want." "Thanks, Dad." My father comforted me gently. Just that made me feel relieved, and I felt better. He's always there to listen, gently supporting me without being too intrusive. I can't thank him enough. A few days later, I received a call from an unfamiliar number on my smartphone. Suspicious, I answered it to find out it was from a hospital. They told me that my father had been in an accident and was in a critical condition. When I told Elliot and Carol, they urged me to go to the hospital immediately, so I headed to the hospital where my father was taken. Apparently, my father was hit from behind by a car while he was walking. The car that hit him seemed to have driven off immediately, and the police were investigating. As my unconscious father lay there, I felt a desperate need to pray. But first, I needed to contact Elliot and Carol. I wouldn't be able to return home anytime soon. I made a call home from the hospital. My husband answered the phone with a brisk voice. "Elliot, I'm sorry. My father hasn't woken up yet, so I can't come home right away." "I understand. You should stay with him. But Christina, if anything happens to your father, the inheritance will go to you, right?" "Excuse me? Don't say that!" "Just checking. The inheritance will go to you, right?" "Well, yeah, but..." "Okay, got it. Keep up the good work taking care of him." Something about my husband's cheerful voice felt off. It was as if it was happening to some stranger, not his father-in-law. Besides, how utterly low of him to bring up the topic of inheritance at such a time. I was deeply disgusted by his words. 2 days later, I decided to go home for a while. When I arrived, I noticed Carol's car was missing from the garage. She must have gone out. As I entered the house feeling a bit relieved that she wasn't there, I was surprised to see both her and Elliot at home. Jesus, I didn't know you guys were both here. Christina, you've been cheating, haven't you? Both my husband and his mother were angry, their eyes narrowed in rage. I had no idea what they were talking about when they suddenly accused me of cheating. Cheating? There's no way I would do that. What's gotten into you all of a sudden? I know you were with a man last Friday. I had a meeting with a client for work. Is that what you're talking about? I wasn't cheating. The very fact that you were meeting a man in secret means you were cheating. You're terrible. If just meeting with someone from work equates cheating, I was beyond exasperated. But no matter how much I argued that they were wrong, they wouldn't listen. You're lying about meeting a client just to deceive Elliot. We're not falling for that. But Carol, I'm telling the truth. Liar, get out of this house. She grabbed my arm, shoved my somehow already packed belongings at me, and tried to kick me out of the house. Hold on, you're misunderstanding. Shut up, just get out. We'll send the rest of your things later. You should be grateful for that. They kicked me out of the house and never let me back in. Why would they suddenly suspect me of cheating? I would never cheat on my husband. Confused, I decided to go back to my parents' house. The next day, all my belongings were delivered. What's going on? Everything seems too organized. As I thought this and started sorting through my things, I noticed something strange. No matter how much I looked for it, my bank card was nowhere to be found. Why was this the only valuable item missing even though the others were there? I remembered when my father had his accident, Elliot seemed overly concerned about the inheritance. I remembered the discomfort I felt at that time. When he heard that the inheritance would go to me, he seemed pleased. Could it be that he stole my card for that reason? If I think about it this way, it makes sense that they suddenly started suspecting me of cheating. They used this as an excuse to kick me out of the house, to monopolize the inheritance. The anger began to boil within me at this realization. I clenched my fists in frustration. I couldn't forgive them for trying to take my father's inheritance away from me without even being concerned about his health. I will make them pay for this. A month later, the intercom at my parents' place rang repeatedly. When I opened the door, Elliot and Carol stormed in, their faces beet red. Hey, your bank card is not working. Care to explain? Explain what's going on, they said as they threw my bank card on the floor. So you two really did steal it. And we got a notice saying the mortgage hasn't been paid. What's going on? Of course the bank card doesn't work. I changed it after seeing how you splurge. This card right here is a decoy. The real one is kept safe here at my parents' house. And I stopped making mortgage payments when I was kicked out of the house. What did you say? My husband, furious, tried to grab me. That's when a stern voice said, "Calm down." At the sound of the sharp voice, both Elliot's and Carol's shoulders flinched. Why? Seeing my father emerge from the back of the house, they looked astounded. Surprised to see my father is healthy? He recovered from his critical condition. Indeed, my father had recovered and was able to be discharged from the hospital safely. I purposely didn't tell them about this. They seemed to think my father had died and were taken aback by his healthy appearance. I've heard everything from Christina. Elliot, what the hell is this? You didn't pay the mortgage or the living expenses, and you even stole the car planning to use my inheritance. Can't you tell the difference between right and wrong? Chastised by my father, Elliot trembled, his face pale. I hear you turned a blind eye when Christina was being insulted by her mother-in-law here and didn't even stand up for her. And you even kicked her out of the house, accusing her of cheating without any proof. Elliot and Carol both seemed to be mumbling some excuses, but their voices were so small I couldn't hear them. Elliot, what were you planning to do with the money from the stolen card? Were you going to spend it on your mistress? I presented the evidence of his affair, which I had gotten by hiring a detective. You suspected me of cheating, but turns out the one who was actually cheating was you! In the photos, my husband was pictured with his mistress, and she was visibly pregnant. After being kicked out of the house by my husband, I started to investigate why he was so desperate for the inheritance, and I found out he was having an affair. It seems that some of his extravagant spending was on his mistress. Your mistress is pregnant with your child. Who's the terrible one now? I guess you were planning to divorce me after you got the inheritance, weren't you? Fine, let's go ahead and divorce then. Of course, I'll make sure to claim damages. When I mentioned the word divorce, both my husband and mother-in-law began to panic. Hold on, Christina. Elliot didn't mean any harm. Forgive him. Let's live together happily again. That's right. My mom was just being strict because she cared for you. Let's be a family of 3 again. They tried to close in on me, defending each other. How dare they suggest living together again? The mere thought sent chills down my spine. When Carol tried to grab my arm, I shook her off. As she stumbled, something fell out of her pocket with a clatter. What the? Isn't this the luxury watch Elliot was looking for? Care to explain, Carol? With a guilty expression on her face, she picked up the watch. This is, She fumbled for an excuse, but it was clear from her flustered state that she had stolen it. Mom, you told me Christina stole it, but it was actually you who stole it? Oh, come on. You were also the one who tried to steal Christina's bank card. I'm not the bad guy here. It's all your fault, Mom. What are you talking about? It all started because you, Elliot, were complaining about not having enough money and your allowance was too small. I did all this for you. I thought Christina's dad was certainly going to die after the way he was hit. Then we could get the inheritance, and I was planning to return the watch without selling it once we got the inheritance. My father and I exchanged looks at her words. Are you saying you caused my father's accident? Did you hit me with your car? She hung her head with a startled expression. Her face was drained of color, and she was shaking. I suddenly remembered when I returned home from my father's hospital, her car was not in the garage. It was Carol who hit my father. She must have taken the car for repairs. After this, Carol was arrested by the police. As expected, her motive was the inheritance. Afterwards, I successfully divorced my husband. I received a hefty amount of compensation. My ex-husband ran out of savings and couldn't pay the mortgage, so he had to give up the house. Even though he remarried his mistress, his ostentatious and condescending attitude didn't change, and they divorced. I heard from someone that he's struggling significantly with the alimony and child support. I have absolutely no sympathy for him. Rather, seeing him, I learned that if you make others unhappy for your own vanity and money, you will certainly face retribution. As for me, I met a wonderful person afterwards, and I'm now living happily ever after.